Today we're going to talk about the guard statement. And before we get into that, we need to review if-else statements, which you should be fairly familiar with. So let's take a look at a typical use case for the if statement. So we're going to use as our example the idea of the requirements it takes to be a member of the House of Representatives in the United States government. So there's three requirements. You need to be 25 years or older, you need to have been a U.S. citizen for 7 years, and you need to be a resident of the state in which you are trying to represent. So those are the three requirements. So if I wanted to have a function that says can be representative, I need to check to make sure that each of those things are true. So I can use if statements. So if age is greater than or equal to 25, then I need to check if the citizenship length is greater than or equal to 7, and if the state resident is true, right? So it's either true or false. So if this is true, so if all those are true, I can say you can be a member of the House of Representatives. But here's where it gets kind of confusing. If I'm not a member of or if I'm not a resident of the state, I can print not a resident of the state. If I have not been a citizen long enough, and again, I can use my brackets to see that this else matches up with this if, but it is getting kind of confusing. I can say you have not been a citizen long enough. If I'm not 25 years old, I can say you are not old enough. And again, that matches up with this. But this gets kind of clunky, and I get what the Apple people call the pyramid of doom, right? It kind of goes in, branch, 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 and then goes back out. However, it does work. So just to test it, I'm going to run it. And it says you are not a resident of the state you're trying to represent because state resident is false. If I change it to true and try to run it again, it says you can be a member of the House of Representatives, so that works there. So what we're going to take a look at next is how to make this code far more readable using the guard statement. So here's that same function as before, the if-else, but then I've rewritten it using guard. And here's the biggest difference between if statements and guard. If statements only execute if the condition is true. Guard's the opposite. The piece inside the brackets only functions if the condition is false. So what it's doing is it's making sure that that statement is true before it moves on to the rest. So let's take a look at how it looks with guard. So I have the same can be representative guard. I just changed the name of the function. But then I say guard age is greater than or equal to 25. If it is, it skips to the next one. Right? So if it's true, it doesn't execute what's inside but goes to the next statement. If it's false, it says you are not old enough and instantly returns the function. So you have the return statement inside a guard, which means it exits the brackets. In this case, it would leave the function. If age is true, it goes to the next statement and says, okay, make guard that the citizenship length is greater than 7. If it is, I go to the next statement. If it's not, then it says you have not been a citizen long enough and returns. And then I guard to make sure that the person's a resident of that state. If they are, it skips down and then prints you can be a member of the House of Representatives. If it is a false statement, it does what's inside the brackets and then returns, which exits the function immediately. Let's go ahead and print that to make sure we get the same functionality. Can be representative. I do that. I think, and there it says, you can see that it says, because I have the function twice, it ran both of them, you can be a member of the House of Representatives. Let's change citizenship length to, let's say, 4, because that shouldn't count because I have to be at least 7. And let's run those two again to verify I'm getting the same result. And it says you have not been a citizen long enough. So guard works the same as an if statement, but I think you can make the argument that this version is a little bit easier to read and see what's going on. So once again, remember that the difference between if and guard, in an if statement, the conditions execute if it's true, or the statements execute if it's true. In a guard, they only execute if they're false. So next, we're going to take a quick look at using guard with optionals. So I've created a quick function here that represents a playlist app, and I'm going to play the next song. And most of the time that will be fine, but if I get to the end of my playlists, the title, artist, and length might be null, so I need to check for that. So I need to make sure that they do have values. So I'm playing the next song, and notice that the three parameters, the title, the artist, and the length, are all optionals. So I need to do some optional binding to make sure that everything is valid before I can go on and play the next song. So I'm going to do the if let. So if let the title equal title, and again, I just made up these variables, the title, the artist, and length. These represent the parameter values. So if let the title equal title, and if let the artist equal artist, and if let the length equals the length, then I know all three values are valid, and I can print, here's the next song. So if I run this, it says up next, Leave the Door Open by Silk Sonic, and it's 4.08 minutes long. I just grabbed the first song that I saw on the Billboard Top 100 today. But again, if I make these all nil, right? My app should still work, or my function should still work without crashing, because I'm doing optional binding. It doesn't return any value or print any value, but it doesn't crash either, which is great. So again, we're using optional binding, which you have seen before. Let's take a look at how to do that same kind of functionality with the guard statement. So here's my same function, play next song in playlist with my optional binding. And here's a guard version of that same function. Same parameters, same optional parameters. In this case, I have guard let the title equal title, and let the artist equal artist, and let length equal length. And again, if any one of those is false, it immediately goes and executes what's in the brackets and just returns it. It exits the function immediately. If everything is true, it goes to the next statement and then prints up next. So let's go ahead and run that to verify that you get the same functionality, and you see that it prints the same information twice. If I make this nil, I can go ahead and run that again, and you can see the first one prints the information, the second one doesn't because it has nil values. It returns before it ever gets to that last statement. So neither crash. You can make the argument again that this guard checks for those things to be valid first before printing on the information. The most important thing, whether you decide to use if or if let or guard, is to make sure that your code is as readable to others as possible.